Our top story: a day after his arrest in the liquor scam in the national capital, the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal was produced before the Rouse Avenue court, where the Enforcement Directorate argued that he was the kingpin and the co-conspirator. They've applied for 10-day custody. The proceedings in the lower court came after Mr. Kejriwal's lawyers withdrew his petition in the Supreme Court, choosing instead to work the lower courts. In his first remarks since he was arrested, Mr. Kejriwal said his life was dedicated to the nation. I'm joined now by my colleague Vedant Agarwal. Vedant, why did the Aam Aadmi Party initially go to the Supreme Court, withdraw that, and then go across to a lower court?
Well, Vishnu, this was something that we've been reporting since morning, because as per protocol, when you oppose a summons or an arrest, you initially go to a lower court, then proceed to the High Court and finally challenge, a High Court order in the Supreme Court. So the Aam Aadmi Party did not follow that protocol in layman terms and approached the Supreme Court registrar yesterday night seeking an urgent hearing. Of course, that urgent hearing was declined yesterday night, and later, of course, in the morning as well, the Supreme Court said that we must follow due protocol. After that, the Aam Aadmi Party decided to withdraw its petition from the Supreme Court and said that we will apply, we'll move the lower court as per due procedure. Now, very quickly, where I come to you from, Vishnu, I come to you from the Rouse Avenue court. There's let me quickly show you visuals around me. There's heavy security deployment here because the Rouse Avenue court in Delhi has reserved its order on Arvind Kejriwal's arrest. Because remember, the Enforcement Directorate, as rightly pointed out, has sought 10-day custody. What were the arguments made? Very quickly, in a nutshell, remember, the Enforcement Directorate made two important points. One, that Arvind Kejriwal is not only a co-conspirator but also has vicarious liability. So this is a new point that the Enforcement Directorate has made and said that there was 45. Arvind Kejriwal received 45 crore rupees as kickbacks from this alleged, this South Cartel, the South Cartel group that the Enforcement Directorate has talked about multiple times in its charge sheet, and that Arvind Kejriwal received 45 crore rupees through that. And Vijay Nair, which remember was the erstwhile communications in charge of the Aam Aadmi Party, he helped, sort of get these kickbacks transferred to the Aam Aadmi Party's accounts and also Arvind Kejriwal's accounts as well. So those are several important points made by the Enforcement Directorate. These are all charges. But Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, on behalf of Arvind Kejriwal, said, apart from the larger points he made, he said that you cannot arrest somebody based on a witness's account, because remember, the Enforcement Directorate had put out a public release saying that during the course of K. Kavita's questioning, it has come out that there was a nexus between K. Kavita, who headed the South Cartel group, former Excise Minister and Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia, and Mr. Kejriwal, and they sort of conspired to receive these kickbacks.
Right, so lots of allegations over there. Let's see what finally comes of that. This is the story that Vedant filed earlier on in the day.
अमित सर कुछ कहना है, कोई संदेश सर?
मेरा जीवन देश के लिए समर्पित है और चाहे अंदर हो या बाहर.
Calm and collected after his first night in custody. Mrs. Kejriwal's lieutenants took their toughest existential battle to the streets. A beleaguered Aam Aadmi Party, left without its patriarch, is now fighting for survival. The arrest of the Chief Minister, a first in the history of Indian politics, has set in motion a chain of events that changes the landscape completely ahead of the big general elections. With the party's national boss, its star campaigner and the principal vote catcher in ED's custody, all eyes now on his number two and fellow campaigner to take over the reins of the party. Hours after the Delhi Chief Minister's dramatic late-night arrest, Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann met Arvind Kejriwal's wife Sunita and his ministers in Delhi.
मुझे ये बता दीजिए टाइमिंग क्या है? ये क्या चाहते हैं? विपक्ष का कोई भी नेता इस इलेक्शन में चुनाव प्रचार ना कर पाए, ये इलेक्शन छीनना चाहते हैं. तो ये भी तो पुतिन के रास्ते पर ही चल रहे हैं. फिर ये डिक्टेटरशिप है.
From behind bars, Arvind Kejriwal managed to bring together bickering opposition leaders who condemned the arrest in one voice, calling it the murder of democracy. In a rare show of solidarity, leaders from across opposition parties went knocking on the doors of the Election Commission against what they called the deliberate targeting of leaders.
75 वर्ष में पहली बार एक पदासीन मुख्यमंत्री को कल रात को गिरफ्तार किया गया है. हमने एक सूची दी 11 और हाल के रीसेंट उदाहरण पुराने उदाहरण तो सैकड़ों हैं। वो 11 के 11 एनसीपी से लेकर टीएमसी से लेकर कांग्रेस से लेकर विपक्ष के हर पार्टी पे है जहां पर एजेंसीज का दुरुपयोग हुआ है, गिरफ्तारी हुई है, लेकिन एक भी उदाहरण नहीं है सत्तारूढ़ पार्टी का।
Less than a month to go for the Lok Sabha polls, an unprecedented constitutional crisis in Delhi, with the capital's chief minister under arrest. Anticipating the arrest, however, Kejriwal had handed over almost all the key ministries to party firebrand Atishi and trusted aide Saurabh Bharadwaj, who are now in charge of running New Delhi.
एक ऐसा केस जिसमें 2 साल में 1 रुपए की रिकवरी नहीं हुई है, उसमें आपने एक सिटिंग चीफ मिनिस्टर को बिना किसी सबूत के गिरफ्तार कर लिया है, वो भी चुनाव की घोषणा के बाद। आप ये बताइए कि अभी राउज एवेन्यू कोर्ट में, दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट में इन समन्स की लीगैलिटी की जांच चल रही थी। क्या ये समन्स कानूनी है कि गैर कानूनी?
The opposition's reaction to this arrest of Arvind Kejriwal is absolutely mystifying and is extremely ironic, because a person who was given a notice by the Enforcement Directorate, which is a law enforcement agency, 4 times, and chooses to ignore it, and despite the court going to court and the court not upholding his plea that he be let out of this investigation, even then 4 times Arvind Kejriwal has ignored the ED notice to appear for investigating this alcohol bribery corruption scam, and now to act as if it is some sort of a shock and surprise.
For a man who started his journey in politics with a crusade against corruption, Kejriwal's arrest is the biggest dent to his party's Kattar Imandar image, on which the Aam Aadmi Party was founded over 10 years ago at the iconic Ramleela Maidan. With Arvind Kejriwal in custody, the Chief Minister's residence has been turned into a fortress. Arvind Kejriwal, remember, has managed to defeat the BJP in Delhi more than once and conquer 2 states in just a matter of few years. Well, while the charges against him are serious, the fact that one of the BJP's strongest political rivals has been arrested days before polls raises serious questions. In New Delhi with camera person Prem Singh, Vedant for NDTV.
The Tamil Nadu Governor R.N. Ravi has re-inducted the DMK leader K. Ponmudi to the state cabinet. This comes after the Supreme Court yesterday warned the governor over his refusing to swear in Mr. Ponmudi. Mr. Ponmudi, who was the Higher Education Minister of Tamil Nadu, had been convicted and sentenced to a 3-year jail term. The case against him was, however, stayed. The Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin launched his election campaign, meanwhile, from the central town of Trichy today. Let's go straight across to NDTV's Sam Daniel. So, Sam, 2 questions. Firstly, of course, Mr. Ponmudi. The charges were, of course, lifted on the basis of which the DMK said that he must be brought back to his post. The governor refused to do that. Now there is clarity and the governor has had no option. Has there been any reaction at all from the governor's house?
Not really, except what he had told the court, that he has no intention of defying the Supreme Court order, Vishnu. But for the ruling DMK, it's certainly a shot in the arm, because it has been relentlessly fighting both in the Madras High Court and in the Supreme Court against the governor R.N. Ravi, who has been working against the constitution, undermining an elected government and their rights. And the ruling DMK calls him as an agent of the BJP and the RSS, trying to scuttle development. And for example, he had turned down many of the bills passed by the Tamil Nadu Assembly after a long delay. When the Assembly reenacted them, instead of immediately giving his assent, he chose to refer them to the President, further complicating it. Likewise, he did not make those appointments recommended by the state government. He also at least twice had skipped the portions of the official speech given to him to be read in the assembly. And opposition ruled states in states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, West Bengal, Punjab, Delhi see a pattern in governors trying to scuttle development and to create obstacles in a bid to tacitly bring disrepute to those governments and to tacitly help the central government. But the governor in the past has denied those allegations, saying that the constitution gives him the provision. While it's certainly a shot in the arm for the ruling DMK, it's also a gamble for them, because ultimately Ponmudi can remain in the seat only if the Supreme Court finds him innocent. Because the Supreme Court made it very clear that it does not want to create an irreversible situation. In that sense, if there's something going wrong, then it will be a huge embarrassment for the minister himself here. But the ruling DMK hopes this will be a lesson for not just for the Tamil Nadu governor, but also for the other governors in opposition ruled states. And this could actually be a flashpoint in terms of U-turn governors in that sense. Following the constitution. Vishnu.
All right, Sam, thanks very much for joining us. Also an important day in Tamil Nadu today as MK Stalin launched his election campaign from the town of Trichy. But we're going to move on now. A fresh setback for the Congress in Himachal Pradesh. 3 independent MLAs have resigned and will likely join the BJP. One of these 3 leaders has said that they will contest the elections on a BJP ticket. Earlier, 6 Congress MLAs had also resigned. The independent MLA said that Chief Minister Sukhvinder Singh Sukhu has targeted MLAs and their families and registered false cases against them after they voted in favour of the BJP candidate in Rajya Sabha elections last month. The BJP legislature party in Himachal Pradesh is in a huddle. Chief Minister Sukhu has accused the BJP of luring MLAs.
आप जानते हैं कि जैसे जैसे लोकसभा के चुनाव आते हैं तो हर प्रकार के हथकंडे भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार अपनाती है और इनकम टैक्स ने उस पर कार्रवाई की है और कार्रवाई करते हुए हमारा जो बैंक अकाउंट है वो सील कर दिया है कि क्या कहीं वो नोटों के दम पर तो नहीं उन्होंने अपने ईमान को गिरवी रख दिया था और दबाव इतना था कि उनको इस्तीफा देना पड़े और आप ही हेलीकॉप्टर में रहे हैं और आप भी सीआरपीएफ के सिक्योरिटी में आ रहे हैं और जा भी हेलीकॉप्टर में रहे हैं तो आप बताइए इतना सारा धन का प्रयोग क्या लोकतंत्र के लिए अच्छा है?
Well, my colleague Ghazali has been tracking this story. He joins us now. Ghazali, earlier on, it did appear that the Congress did have the numbers to ensure that this kind of challenge would be dealt with. However, in light of these new developments taking place, is the government under threat? Will it survive?
See, the government doesn't face an immediate danger because they have already successfully survived that finance bill while they're passing the budget, as they suspended the BJP MLAs during the proceedings. So, next vote of trust or trust vote or the vote no confidence motion can only be moved after 3 or 6 months when the session is convened by the Assembly Speaker. But what is imminent threat for the Congress right now is that if BJP just held a legislative party meeting and if these 3 MLAs and the 6 rebel MLAs who have been disqualified by the Speaker, if all these 9 MLAs join, ex-MLAs join the BJP and then contest the elections and win simultaneously, then the numbers between the BJP and the Congress will tally. 34 MLAs will be with the BJP and 34 MLAs will be with the Congress. And it will be a very likelihood that perhaps the president's rule will have to be imposed in the state. Or if BJP managed to poach 1 or 2 more MLAs from the Congress, then the BJP will form the government in Himachal Pradesh. So as of now, Sukhvinder Singh Sukhu and his government will certainly focus on the by-poll elections, the assembly by-polls, more than the Lok Sabha elections to retain the party in power there in Himachal Pradesh.
All right, Ghazali, thanks very much for sharing those details. In other news, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was honoured today with the highest recognition of the Kingdom of Bhutan. The honour, which affirms the extremely close bonds between India and Bhutan, comes at a time when Bhutan faces an unprecedented threat from China, which unilaterally continues to occupy its territory despite ongoing boundary talks.
The highlight of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Bhutan is perhaps the award that he has been given. The highest civilian honour, the Order of the Druk Gyalpo, was conferred upon him by His Majesty the King of Bhutan. An affirmation that comes at a time when Bhutan faces a shared territorial threat from China.
Dari ngachira na jomgumide tam jaga jung niba chimse gyakap ki mise 대 주라 롤렌치 모디 거라기 카톨레 마치 룰루 대 잡조르문베.
This statement from the Bhutanese king would have been watched closely by Beijing, which has been trying to extend its sphere of influence in Bhutan by opening an embassy. Bhutan and China do not have diplomatic relations. They are also in the midst of talks to resolve boundary issues. But that hasn't stopped China from unilaterally occupying Bhutanese territory, including areas that are considered the ancestral home of the Bhutanese royal family. Today the Prime Minister was welcomed by thousands of Bhutanese nationals who lined the road to receive him. The show of affection was clearly evident.
आपने एक एक शब्द जो लिखा है, मैं नहीं जानता हूं कि मेरी योग्यता कितनी है, लेकिन आपने जो कुछ भी लिखा है, आपने जो कुछ भी कहा है, हो सकता है उन मुद्दों को लेकर के, उन भावनाओं को लेकर के मैं अपने जीवन को भी ढालूं, अपने कार्यों को भी आगे बढ़ाऊं, ताकि आपकी जो मनोकामना है, आपने जो भाव व्यक्त की है, उसको मैं भविष्य में साकार करके भारत भूटान को, इन संबंधों को नई ऊंचाई पर ले जाने में निमित्त बन सकूं.
Both sides also agreed on 7 MOUs or agreements, which included areas like education and cooperation in space. Bhutan is also setting up the Gelefu Mindfulness City, which will use a land link to connect Bhutan to Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand and Singapore through Assam and Northeast India. This is the last visit of the Prime Minister ahead of the general elections and comes less than a week after the Bhutanese Prime Minister was in India for a visit. With Vishnu Som and camera person GD Shankar, in Thimphu, Bhutan, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Well, there's trouble for Apple with the US company being sued by the US government, which claims that the tech giant stifled competition and imposed a high cost on consumers. Apple has been facing several legal cases lately, lawsuits which could cost them more than $1 billion in fines around the world.
Fresh legal trouble for Apple with the US government suing the tech giant on Thursday. The US Department of Justice is alleging that Apple illegally monopolized the smartphone market and prevented competition by restricting access to its software and hardware. In a scathing lawsuit filed in a federal court in New Jersey, the US government, along with the attorney generals of 16 states, allege that Apple suppresses mobile cloud streaming services, blocks cross-platform messaging apps, limits third-party digital wallets, and even limits how well third-party smartwatches work on its platforms.
But as our complaint alleges, Apple has maintained monopoly power in the smartphone market not simply by staying ahead of the competition on the merits, but by violating federal antitrust law.
According to reports, Apple has hit out at the lawsuit and called it misguided. Reports say the company has vowed to vigorously defend against the lawsuit. Undeterred by the US government lawsuit, Apple CEO Tim Cook launched the biggest Apple store in Asia on Thursday in Shanghai. This is the third time that the US Department of Justice has sued Apple for antitrust violations in the past 14 years. Apple is the latest in a string of B-tech companies to face monopoly acquisitions as the US government cracks down on a powerful industry. Meanwhile, Apple's reportedly aggressive response indicates that the company is in no mood to relent, and given how long the US government case against Microsoft in the 90s lasted, it could be a while before a resolution is reached. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV.